This week's video, it's a bit of a request actually, and comes on the back of some recent online portfolio reviews that I've been doing where photographers have really struggled to get the best out of their black and white images. So in this video, I'm going to take you through 5 of the most common editing mistakes that I see photographers make in Lightroom. I'm going to show you how to avoid them and how to fix them. Now in 2003, I started shooting professionally with digital cameras, and for the previous 10 years or so, I'd been making a very good living from shooting black and white 35mm film. And obviously I wanted to recreate this look when I moved over to digital. In order for me to get a good black and white conversion, particularly in those early days of digital, my color photography had to be absolutely on point, and this is still true today. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they think that if they've got a poor colour photograph and they can't do a lot with it, if they turn it to black and white and call it art, everything will be okay. If we try and convert a badly exposed, noisy file with a heavy colour cast, we won't get a good black and white. The tones will start to get messed up a little bit, so we'll have a struggle trying to get contrast and luminance back into the actual file. So before I even get to converting the image to black and white, I have to make sure that my colour file looks good. So I make sure that the exposure is in the ballpark, the white balance has been corrected, and any colour noise has been eliminated. I don't worry too much about luminance noise. We're dealing with black and white at the end of the day. But colour noise, I have to get rid of. It just looks horrible when you convert it to black and white. So once we have our colour file all ready to go, the next stage really is to convert it to black and white, and this stage causes a lot of problems because a lot of photographers convert to black and white using a preset. The problem, particularly with black and white, is that unless your photograph is identical to the one the preset was made from, you won't achieve the same look. There are just too many variables in play. Now the better way is to use profiles, and these can be found under the basic panel in the develop module. Even the basic Adobe monochrome profile, which to be honest doesn't look that exciting, is better for your pictures than a preset because the effect that it applies is consistent across all photographs in all lighting conditions. Profiles also allow us to use the full range of adjustments in the develop module, and this is really important. There is nothing worse than trying to alter the contrast of a photograph to find that all of the contrast tools are being used by the preset. Now I've taken this concept of profiles further with my SilverChrome profiles, which are actually based on different film types, and they're a little bit more exciting, I guess, than the Adobe monochrome profile. But the Adobe monochrome profile is actually fine for a lot of images. I would avoid using the Adobe adaptive black and white profile, the new one. Maybe it will get better over time, but honestly at the moment it's not great. Now I've seen many good images, really good images, completely ruined by the application of either too much contrast or not enough contrast. To achieve good contrast, I always start by setting the black point and setting the white point in the image. And to do this, I just go to the black slider and hold the Alt key down and then move the slider until I can see the visual representation of how much of my image has gone to black. And I do exactly the same with the white. And once those are dialed in, I can start to refine the contrast. Now for me, the best way of doing this is with an S-shaped adjustment curve. I make the curve, I save it as a preset, and I adjust the preset slider to taste when I apply that preset. It really is that easy. There's nothing too difficult or too complicated about adjusting contrast. Now, Lightroom does give you some other options for contrast. The contrast slider is one option, and it's fine if you want to do a quick and dirty adjustment, but honestly, it's a little bit too crude for my taste. Now, in the color grading panel, you can adjust the highlight, shadow, and midtone sliders, which again will give you more or less contrast depending on how you use them, and they can be really useful in some situations, and I used them quite a bit when the feature first appeared in Lightroom. These days, it's a little bit too much of a faff, and I'd rather use a contrast curve. Now the presence section can really help refine contrast. You have to be careful here because the tools can make the photograph look really gimmicky if they're overused. Clarity is probably the most useful option as it affects the midtones more than the other two options do. And I find that if you sort the midtones out, that's where most of the life comes from in a black and white photograph. For me, a little clarity gives a similar feel to a high resolution film scanner, which I really quite like. Another thing to consider when editing is where your photographs will end up. Normally, I use the medium grey background option in Lightroom for the majority of my editing. But if I'm refining images for a zine and the zine has black pages, I'll change the Lightroom background to black, as it makes quite a big difference to the way that I perceive the contrast. And similarly, if I'm working on an image which is going to be printed and surrounded by a white matte, then the photograph will be refined with a white background. The background makes a big difference in terms of how you perceive contrast. Now, blown highlights are a major problem that I see all of the time. Unfortunately, it's not an easy fix, but you can help prevent it by starting with your camera technique. I always set my camera to slightly underexpose and I always shoot raw. Now, if the highlight areas are completely gone and we need to kind of save the shot, the best way of dealing with this is to try and disguise those highlight areas. So if we take this photograph here as an example, we've got this area in the top left which is completely blown out as the sun comes through the clouds. So the first thing we're going to do is paint a mask on over the top with a brush. And then we're going to drop our whites down quite considerably in order to fill in that sort of area of no information with a tone. Now, the reason for this is to allow us to then add a grain effect to the whole image. And if we don't have that tone there, the grain won't affect the extreme blown out highlight area. We're now going to add a grain effect. Once we've applied that, we're going to refine that area by adding another mask, and then we're going to add some dehaze to kind of blow it out a little bit more, but to kind of soften it at the same time, so it looks a little bit more authentic than just losing all the highlight detail. And the final thing, and it's the one that I've never really been able to kind of get my head around, it's this obsession with noise. This is a 400 ASA film scan blown up to 100%. And this is a digital file at 320 ISO that some people would consider to be too noisy, but compared to the film image, it's noise free. Grain in particular looks absolutely fantastic. It adds character, helps to soften hard edges and make transitions from midtones to highlights much more natural. And yet I've seen photographers who obsess about the noise to the point where they'll try and completely remove it by running it through several denoise apps. If we look at an image at 100% on a 27-inch 4K monitor, it's like going up to a 6-foot print, sticking your nose against the print, getting a loop out and then seeing if the print looks okay. It won't, it'll look awful. And yet this is how photographers view their work. When you view a print, no matter how large, you naturally move to the correct distance away from it to see it. Noise then doesn't become an issue. It only becomes an issue for those who are engaging in the art of pixel peeping. If you bought one of our zines or one of our prints in the past, you'll see how good our noisy images look when they're in the format that they were intended to be seen in. Now, overuse of noise reduction can make the photograph look really artificial. It can make it look digital, it can make it look sterile, and it's not a look that I like at all. And I don't honestly think most people do. The industry at the moment is currently obsessed with sharpness and clean images, and this ultimately filters down to the end user. Us, the photographers. Honestly, if we spent more time taking photographs and less time obsessing over the noise that's in them, I think the photography industry would be in a much better place. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, we'd love to see you subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to see more videos on Lightroom editing, let me know in the comments. Until the next time, take care and I'll see you soon.